Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. On a previous episode, I did a video for all the people who were pretty much not happy with the way Microsoft was pushing out Windows 10 updates, or they were just tired of dealing with the whole Windows platform. And in some cases, some people really actually hated Windows 10. And the video that I did, it primarily talked about learning how to use Linux Mint, and that was being done through virtual machine. And so on this continuing series, I'm going to continue this tutorial on how to learn Linux Mint. And it isn't just for Windows 10 users. You could also do this on a Mac as well if you are considering making the transition to Linux. But let's go ahead and start. Now, you should have already went through my first video on how to install VirtualBox and how to install Linux Mint on there. And if you haven't, then you could go back and watch that video and you can learn how to do that. So what you want to do is, go open up your virtual machine and go ahead and start your Linux Mint virtual machine. So once you do that, it should come up like this. Okay, so I'm going to make this full screen and we're going to be working in the virtual machine. So this is basically a very basics tour of Linux Mint. And this is for people who've never used Linux Mint or even Linux before. And so a lot of these things that I'll be talking about, they're very, very basic. Okay, so whenever you use Linux Mint, you'll notice obviously this is the desktop. And this is very, very similar to a Windows environment. And what I mean by Windows environment is it's more closer to Windows 7 and before than it is to Windows 10, except if you're using the classic mode and not the tile mode. Now, if you're a Mac user, this is not going to be very familiar to you, but most people who have used the Mac will be able to use Linux Mint because most people have used Windows in the past. And so whenever you log in, you notice there is a menu right here, and this is basically your start program section. Okay, and I'm going to go through some of the parts that I think are important, and I'm not going to go through every single detail that's available here. So the first thing you see here, this is all categorized automatically by Linux, but these are all your accessories. So those are things like your calculator, your PDF reader, and your screenshot method. There's also text editors around here, and there's a notes application as well. And there's also a USB image writer, which means you could make that bootable Linux, Linux USB drive that I showed you on the previous episode. And there's also a USB stick formatter, meaning you can format a USB stick to work with Windows or with Linux or Mac or whatever the file system that you need for that. Okay, and I do want to make a note that all of these programs that I'm talking about, these are already installed by default when you install Linux Mint, so you don't have to go and install anything. Okay, secondly, we have graphics, and here we have GIMP. This is basically just like Photoshop. This is an open source professional image editor that works on Windows, Linux, and Mac. So if you're familiar with using GIMP, you should be right at home here. There's also a Gthumb. So that's kind of like a video or image organization tool. And there's also an image viewer as well. And, when you're using this, it's going to be using the image viewer by default. Okay. And you could also use Gthumb as well. And there's also a built-in scanner application as well. So Simple Scan, if you have a scanner attached to it, it already has one available that will scan your documents or pictures. And down here on the internet, we have Firefox. And most people are familiar with Firefox. And this is for people who still chat. And there's also an all-in-one instant messenger that supports many different platforms, including Facebook on here, which was probably the one that most people are going to use. And there's also a Thunderbird email, and Thunderbird is also available on every platform. This is a complete email manager solution, very similar to Outlook, but I think a lot better. And this is for people who use BitTorrent. Okay, And then we're going to move over to Office. And this one is the one that I use a lot. And so if you're used to using Microsoft Office, you feel right at home with LibreOffice. And LibreOffice is also multi-platform. So if you use this on Windows or Mac, you should be able to use it right here on Linux as well, because they are the same. Now for sound and video, we have Banshee. And Banshee is basically your whole media collection tool, your media player, and it also does playlists, and it will also be able to handle your iTunes playlist as well. And right here we have a built-in DVD CD burner, so if you wanted to do any of that, that's available. And we have a video player here. This is Totem. And we have the most popular media player out there, multi-platform, is VLC Media Player. And down here in administration, this is going to be all your like admin stuff, just like it says, okay? And there are a lot of items here, but the main ones that I'm going to be showing you is the software manager. And there's also a settings option too, which is actually under preferences, okay? So under preferences, you could change things like your background, your color, date and time, and so forth. But if you keep going down, you know, here's your display. There's also a settings menu as well, system settings. And most of the system setting items, they're all here, right here. They're already broken up. But I'm going to show you the system settings as well. So then you could look and see everything all at once. But basically, everything that you need is pretty much here in this preferences menu. Okay, and over here, this is actually your favorites. Okay, so what that means is if you wanted to add something to your favorites, you know, you'll choose it, you'll right click on your mouth, and then you can add to your favorites, and it'll add it to your favorites just like I did there. And you can remove this as well if you go back over to the application that you have on favorites. Like I just added Thunderbird, I could right click and then I could remove from favorites. Simple as that. So this is an easy way for you to get to your applications that you use a lot. Now there's also something called the terminal, and for people who have used older versions of Windows or Mac, every single operating system underneath it all, it looks like this. It's all command line, okay? Every single operating system underneath it all, it is command line, okay? And so all this graphical user interface that we have, this is basically the windowing system. So every single operating system, whether it's Windows, Mac, or so forth, the base level is your command line interface. Okay, so this really only applies to the people who are technically adept, but you can learn how to do command line right here as well. Okay, so but most people aren't going to be doing that if you are a beginner. Okay, now this is the part that I want to talk about in terms of the places where you probably want to go look at just to kind of learn. The first being is the system settings. Okay, you could either go to preferences here and go down to system settings, okay, right here, or there's already a default shortcut right here. So we're gonna go here, and this is where you're gonna be able to adjust system settings, and to be honest with you, a lot of this is a lot easier to use than it is on Windows. It's not buried under so many menus. Okay, so backgrounds here, this allows you to change the background, your image background, your desktop background. Okay, but this might not make sense to you, but these are older versions of Linux, okay, or Linux Mint, and these are the older wallpapers, so you could go back to the ones that you like. Like, for example, I like this particular wallpaper. All you have to do is you could click on it, or you could double click on it, and it'll change the background. Okay, really easy, very self-explanatory too. So easy way to change your background there. So let's go ahead and change it to a sunset, and you could just go back, and you could go back to your other settings, and these are like primarily the look of it. Okay, there's other things called effects, and if you play around with this, you could add special effects to your windows and so forth. I really don't spend a lot of time with that, but you can go there if you want. There's fonts. See, there's window effects right here. And it's a little slow here because I'm actually doing it on a virtual machine. And as I mentioned previously, I don't have a super powerful laptop, okay? And there's also something right here called themes, okay, where you could change the look of your windowing system. So you could change the way things look. Like, for example, this is the default, okay? So I could change the way this looks. So this is the whole desktop. So right now its default is cinnamon, I think, and if you click on something else like the mint orange, it'll change the way the windows look, the folders, and so forth. Let me see if that worked. Yeah, sometimes, like I said, on the virtual machine it's slower, so we're gonna go ahead and move ahead if possible. Okay, see, now it changed the color of things. Okay, and you could play around with that. So this allows you to tweak your operating system and to basically make it look the way you want. And maybe in a future episode I'll show you how to do that, but it's pretty detailed. Now a lot of these, they're very self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through a lot of these, at least not on this particular episode, because there could be a lot of things here and I could spend a lot of time on it. But you could just look through here, and for the majority of people, you don't really need to do anything once you start. Okay, you could just leave it the default, but I want to show you how that works. Okay, and also if you wanted to change your desktop, you could always go to your main desktop. You could right click on your mouse, and that'll allow you to change the desktop background. Okay, now here's my computer and home, and you could remove these, but it's not the same as Windows. You just can't right click and remove it from your desktop, which is kind of weird. What you can do is if you go to settings, and there's an option called desktop, and so let's go back to settings real quick, and there's an option called desktop where you could remove these items if you wanted a very clean background. And I think they do it on purpose is because they don't want people to accidentally remove this for people who are new users and not know where to go. But if you come here to desktop and you double click on it, see, you could turn these icons on and off. So normally I just don't have computer on there. Okay, and I just have the home because that's your main folder. Okay, and I would leave the rest of it on, but it's up to you, you know. So I'll leave it on so then it looks the same as what you would get. Okay, so when you click on here in home, it's just your standard file explorer, but it's really powerful. Okay, so there's a lot of things you could do here, but let me show you the structure of Linux Mint. Okay, so whenever you click on the home folder, this is your default folder. These are your main folders. Okay, and Linux Mint, it organizes everything really well, and you know, you could always, just like Windows or Mac, you could always create a new folder and so forth. Okay, but you could also do things like open up multi-tab windows. And for people who use Windows, this is nothing new, but Linux Mint, or Linux in general, pioneered a lot of these features before they ever got into Windows or Mac. Okay, so not much there, but it's very powerful as you play around with it more and more. Okay, so now one thing I want to talk about is installing programs. Typically, if you're from the Windows or from the Mac world, you're used to going to internet websites and then downloading the programs that you want. Now in Linux, it works differently. Okay, and Linux has been doing this way longer than any of the modern or mobile operating systems, and you would be familiar with this. So this is very similar to the concept of an app store. Okay, but with Linux, it's been here a very long time. So if you want to add new programs, the best way to do it is you go to administration, then you go to software manager. Okay, now the software manager can be kind of slow at first, but you're going to put in your password, whatever password that you put whenever you created this account. And let me try again. Okay, and what this is going to allow you to do is go to basically a Linux Mint app store, and pretty much everything in there is free. Okay, and this is where you're going to download the programs. And the reason why Linux does this is a couple of reasons, actually many reasons. The first being is security. Okay, so if they have it all in one place, just like an app store, they have more control over what comes in and out, and there's a lot of checks that are being done in between so that you don't download a program that's going to give you viruses, malware, and so forth. Okay, and the second reason that they do it, and it's very similar to the whole concept of an app store or a Google Play Store, is that if you have it all in one place, it makes things a lot easier, so you don't have to go to so many different places to download all your different programs. And so now it's up, and it's going to take you a little bit of time to get used to this, as soon as it loads. But basically, everything is categorized for you. Okay, so you'll see once it all loads up. But basically the whole concept of Linux is, if you know the name of, they call them packages, okay? So if you know the name of the packages, you could just type it in here. But if you're new to Linux, you're not going to be familiar with the names. So what you could do is just, you could go around here and look around and kind of see what programs are available, okay? And if it has a check mark, that means it's already been installed on your machine, your operating system. And I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but you could come here and look at it. You could read the details of it. And for a lot of people, they'll probably just go to the category that they need software for. So for example, if I went to internet, you could browse and see, every type of internet program that is available through the software manager. Okay, so here, see, you have all these other ones that you could download. And let me show you of installing one if it doesn't take too long. So let me install this FileZilla, okay? This is a FTP program. So if you wanted to install this, you just double click on it, okay? And it might take a minute or two for it to load, especially if you're doing it through a virtual machine like myself. And here it's going to give you all the descriptions of what it does. And all you have to do is just click on install if you want to install it. Okay, and like I said, it works very, very similar to an App Store or the Google Play Store. Okay, and once you click on install, you're going to see like a progression meter right here, like just right there, and it'll tell you when it's done. And this is a fairly small program, so you'll be able to see it in action right now. So I really like the way this works, but after this, I'm also going to show you the normal way that most people are familiar with from Windows and from Mac, where they go to a website to download a program. And the thing is, if you notice, like Apple and Windows, they're all heading towards the same way, where they want to make it like a single app store, just like they have on their mobile devices. But Linux already does it, okay? So for everybody who uses Linux, they'll probably feel at home with this app store-like experience, okay? So whatever this installs, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically categorize it for you in your menu program, so you don't have to do that, okay? So that might take a second or two, but if you did want to go to the standard way or the normal way that you're used to installing programs, more programs are available in Linux now than there were before. So if you open up your browser, you could just go to the website and see if there is a version available for Linux. And a lot of times more and more programs are being provided for Linux as well. And since Linux Mint is based upon Ubuntu, which is the most popular distribution of Linux available, a lot of programs now, they also have an Ubuntu version for Linux, okay, which Linux Mint will be able to run. Okay, so that program is just installed. If you go here to your menu, and it should be under accessories, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so if you go here and let me see, where was it? It might be under here, under accessories. If not, it'll be under maybe internet, but yeah, there it is. There's FileZilla right there. So it already automatically categorizes it for you after it installs. So I'm going to show you an instance where you could download and install a program through the internet, just like you would on Windows or Mac. So I know for sure that Google Chrome, it is available in Linux. Okay. And I'm not going to download it here and install it, okay, because this is on a virtual machine, so it does take me a while to download and install, so I don't want this video to be too long. But let's go ahead and go to Chrome. We'll just type in Chrome. And the great thing is, a lot of these websites, or at least Google, it automatically can tell that you are using Linux, so it'll go to the correct version. Okay, so if you come down here to the Chrome browser, you'll notice that there'll be a Linux version available. And for Linux Mint, if you're downloading a program, in Windows you have an exe file, and I can't remember the extension for Mac, but in Linux Mint the extension is .deb. That's a deb file. So whenever you download the file, you just double click on it from your download folder and it'll install it. Okay, so if you download it here, see, it already recognized that you're in Linux. You just click on download, just like normal. This isn't anything new for people who's used to the Windows or Mac environment, okay? and then you would just go ahead and choose your version and then just install it when it's done. See, there it is. Just you could save the file and then you could install it when when it's done downloading. And what it'll do is it'll download it to your download folder, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I'm gonna show you that really quick. And so that is basically it for this general tour of Linux Mint. So this is after you've installed your virtual machine, and this is basically your very first experience with Linux Mint. See, there it is. There's the file right there. So as you can see, if you're coming from Windows or Mac, this is very user friendly. It's just definitely not as difficult as some people who would make it out to be, especially if they've never used Linux Mint before. And I think this is a lot easier to use than Windows or Windows 10, because we're so used to using Windows, but once you start using Linux Mint, you'll realize that Windows is pretty complex. So that is basically it for this particular tutorial of how you could transition, or in some cases leave Windows 10 or Mac and head over to Linux Mint. On the next tutorial, I'm going to do a little more details on some of the programs and some of the things that you could do on a Linux Mint. So if you had any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below. And if you had any other questions, remember that I am on Snapchat at Geek Outdoors. You could send me a snap there. And thanks for watching this episode. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com. And I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.